Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall podcast, where we dive into life.
Both the messy parts and the moments of joy, and everything in between. I'm Jason Wilcox, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Dr. Tansei Lee, a licensed clinical psychologist.
Well, today we'll be talking about mental load. What is it? How does it show up in the relationship? How to assess if it's unbalanced, and how to address things when it's causing tension in the relationship.
Yeah, so I guess to start off for our audience, what do we define as mental load?
For me, mental load is the things that occupied your mind, organizing tasks for the family or for the couple, chores, errands, grocery lists, like anything that needs to be thought of so that things can move forward and be completed. I define as the mental load.
So when we're looking at this in relationships, we're looking at the mental load of both parties within this relationship, with their mental load of everything that's running on their mind. But there's this other side of mental load of where's the mental load coming from? So if someone has a really stressful job, they might be so occupied that their mental load feels like it's way more because they're just so strapped. So that could cause an imbalance in mental load as well.
I had an individual comment that they feel like they have to think about everything and decide everything and come up with all the plans for their relationship. And they're kind of burnt out. And they're feeling like, I wish my partner could plan a vacation for us. And I've been asking for this for like 20 years, and they still haven't done it yet. And that's making me feel like they just don't care about making me feel special. And all I ask is for them to just take this one project or task, and they still haven't done it. And then we started talking about the mental load that they have with everything going on: house project, children, grandchildren, pets, household stuff, their work. And then now we're looking at the marriage and the romance and the intimacy that they have been feeling like it's been lacking, and that their partner, in other ways, okay, they haven't stepped up. But in this one particular task, when it comes to their vacation time and going somewhere special, that they felt like they were really let down by their partner.
Yeah, so I think that's why there's an importance to delineate some of this, because someone can perceive that they have a higher mental load, but it's not because of a mismatch in responsibilities. On the flip side, like what you're talking about, where the mental load is coming in because there's a breakdown in responsibilities being balanced and people taking charge of things and it falling all on one person. Again, I think even that needs to be broken down a little bit, because you gave a couple different examples. You gave an example of like planning a trip versus a responsibility in the home of something that has to be done. If it's responsibilities in the home, we're looking at, is it balanced or is it not? And that one's important, because if it's not balanced, it's not going to feel good for the partner that has to do the bulk of whatever it is. So it's going to be important that if that's the case, you guys have an honest conversation, sit down, look at how do you balance this. And what I've seen in couples when they try to do this is they try to add things in there that aren't going to help. So they might try to add in there, well, my job's more taxing than yours. Well, that's not going to help the conversation about the balancing the responsibility load at home.
One is quantifiable, right? One is like, okay, we have 8 errands and chores to do at home. Let's look at who's doing what and who's been doing what and what can be divided and it feels fair. Like there's a negotiation and compromise there, where saying your job is taxing and my job is taxing gets us nowhere.
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing to think about here, and sometimes this is where people kind of fall flat, is one person has like the overarching big picture of everything. So then the other partner almost feels like they're not responsible. And so they look to the partner that sees the big picture as kind of almost like the manager. And this puts a mental load on the other partner, and it's breaking partnership now, because you're adding a mental load on this other person who has to take the position of quote unquote manager, and they have to give all the direction. And that is a mental load in and of itself. So when you're breaking down responsibilities, what you want to be looking at is, how do we break down who actually owns this responsibility and oversees it. So no one's having to manage the other person. So it's breaking down, like the simplest one is you cook the meals this week and I cook the meals that next week. You do dishes this week, I do dishes next week. Or, hey, you're a really great cook, so you take care of the meals, I take care of the dishes. You don't have to remind me, I don't have to remind you. I know what what I oversee, what I manage, and I make sure that's taken care of, and we make sure we balance the load.
And what oftentimes happens or get brought into the session when I'm meeting with folks and why they're so burnt out or feeling so disappointed or let down or uncared about, or I would say neglected in some ways, is that they are doing this quietly, right? I have some clients who shut down. They don't assertively say, I'm really overwhelmed. Can you please do the dishes tonight? Or, hey, you know, I'm wiped out and I feel like I'm not getting support, you know? So it's like there's a lack of communication because communication get broken down and that barrier is there when people shut down and become nonverbal. They retreat, or I have one client say, I anger clean. I get so pissed off, I just do everything myself. I don't even bear asking for help because it just feels pointless. And so I do think that there's lack of communication. That's one theme that I notice in the people who bring this up and feel that their mental load is way more than their partner in the relationship.
Yeah, communication is key, like we've talked about in many other episodes. It's really important that we use assertive communication. We're explicit. And in this scenario, it's really important to plan ahead and not try to do it in the moment. Really look at who has responsibilities over what, who manages what thing.
Okay. And Jason, you were kind of discerning the difference between like household chores and errands versus like a big trip, like planning a couple's vacation or planning a nice date night. How is that different?
Yeah, that gets different because it's no longer responsibilities to make the home function. This is now like a nicety or preferences. So if you have a partnership where neither like to go out to eat, that's not going to happen. If you have a partnership where both love to go out to eat, you're probably going to have a pretty balanced approach to this, that both are going to be taking on responsibilities of planning things. But where the problem comes into play is if one person really loves it and the other person really doesn't love it.
Yeah.
And so that's why this isn't a responsibility. Now it becomes a conflict of desires, of preferences, and things that people love. And you said something earlier when you're talking about planning a trip. And you said the person doesn't feel cared about now.
Mm-hmm.
That would go back to a negative core belief, though. And if you haven't heard our other podcasts about negative core beliefs, I really encourage you to go back and listen to them because it's critical in understanding how relationships fall apart and how to make them really, really strong.
Yeah. And I would say I'm really proud of this particular individual because they were able to identify that after they verbalized that in session. They're like, I know that's something I need to work on because I'm making his behavior about his love for me and his care for me. And that's not really the case. And I was like, I am so proud of you for being able to introspect and be aware of that. And, we're still looking at the communication and the assessment of how to assess in the relationship and how to get to this place of let's look at what is actually going on for you, for me, and then for us, and really decide how do we move forward as a couple, because feeling this way is not good and it creates tension and it pushes you away from your partner, right? Causes big explosive conflict and arguments because one partner holds it in, the other one's kind of not knowing what's going on or feeling the tension, but it's not being spoken about. So what would be some tools or techniques to really get folks to come to the table and kind of talk about these things honestly?
Well, that goes back to assertive communication. I mean, the formula is still very much the same. Identify your negative core beliefs, get them out of there, right? This isn't about whether they care about you or don't care about you or whether they love you or don't love you. This is about their strengths, their desires and preferences that's impacting their behaviors. So that's not about you. So first, deal with negative core beliefs. Second, be assertive in communication. So if it comes to something like this, like a trip that's a preference, we want to speak to our preferences. So it would be going to the person, the partner, saying, hey, I love going on trips. I would love to do another trip with you. Are you willing to plan the next one? Or are you willing to join me in planning the next one? And if your partner is the type of partner where it doesn't spark them and you find that you have to hound them to get them to do this, you might want to start looking at a different approach. You might want to start looking at, if you love doing a trip that much and you want to balance you guys planning them, I mean, ask yourself, if you love the trip so much and you're almost like pulling your partner along, do you want to just plan a you trip or a girls trip or a different type of trip and let your partner stay home and let them figure out, oh, wait, is this important to me or was it not important to me to go? And if it is, it's time for them to pull some of their weight. And if it's not, go have fun.
Some of the things you're recommending, Jason, I hear people have done. And one thing I really stress in these moments is just, can we accept our partners for who they are? And so it's going to be important that if this is something your partner is not capable or interested in doing, can we be okay with that without that meaning they don't love us, that they don't care about us, that we don't matter to them? Again, going back to the negative core beliefs, or what is the negative narrative telling you? And so I encourage acceptance without judgment. I encourage folks to be realistic about the ways they might be viewing the actions of their partners, what it does mean or doesn't mean. And if we can land in a gray space of, let's just be neutral. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's not they love me or they don't love me. It's just this is their behavior. And some of these couples, they have been together for a long, long time. And I'm like, well, you know your husband really well. You know your wife really well. You know your partner really well. And so this doesn't surprise you. And yet it's been a point of frustration for you because you've made it mean something negative about their love for you or how much you matter to them.
Right. And I love what you were saying about acceptance. It reminds me of something I was going to say earlier and forgot, is that the other thing you can do is, if this is something you love so much and you can accept your partner, and if it's not too much of a mental load for you, then just invite them on the trips with you and know that you'll probably be planning them. I mean, it's not a huge example, but I love rock hounding. Most of the time, if you and I are going to go rock hounding, I'm planning it. And it has nothing to do with whether you like it or not. It's just that that's such a huge thing for me. Often when I think about a rock hounding trip, I'm like, oh, let's go do this. And you're involved. I don't think anything of it. There's other trips that you get more excited about and you plan those and do them. But the point being is, if this is something you really love and your partner's not there to love it with you, like it's not a passion of theirs, you might be the one planning it. And is that okay? Is that okay to just say, hey, this is something I love and I love my partner with me, so is it worth it?
And for some of the listeners who are perfectionists and who have a hard time letting go of control or having to see a vision, and then your partner actually was able to plan a trip, but not to your standard or not to your expectation, we still have to give them credit where credit is due. And to acknowledge, like, yeah, they did plan this trip. Be mindful that it might not be to your standard, it might not be to your vision, and they did it. So sometimes I have to challenge my folks to go, can you really let go of control here? And can you also be okay with what the results are if you are not the one planning it? So, I think it's important to self-reflect. I think it's important to see what part we also have in creating this dynamic long term that has brought us to a place of frustration. And we talk a lot about empathy building in the relationship and how can we see it from the other person's side that, wow, I have a partner who loves planning trips and I love just going along for the ride. I had no idea that, it would mean so much, and I'm really not interested in planning and I wouldn't do such a good job anyways, right? And so I think it is important to Just pause and hear from the other partner instead of assuming they don't care. They just don't care.
Really see the other partner for where they're at and who they are and not make it about the negative core belief. I think it's also important to go back to the responsibilities that create a mental load too, and finding a way to balance those. If you're trying to figure out how to balance responsibilities, there's a number of ways to figure that out. One way, though, that can be helpful, it doesn't work in all situations. I'm going to say that up front, but some situations this works, and it's an easy way to figure out how to balance it, is by saying how much downtime do we both get. So if you can measure the downtime, then you can also easily measure how much time everything else takes. And it becomes easier to partner together to say, hey, this all has to be taken care of before we get our downtime. And so if we take care of those things, we kind of have a good idea that we're balancing this load because we get about the same amount of downtime. So that's one way. It doesn't work for everyone, but it's a simple solution that might work for you. The other thing I've seen is where one partner is really truly taking on the bulk of responsibilities, taking on that mental load. They talk to their partner multiple times and their partner is just not stepping up. This can be very difficult and hard. And there's a lot of different solutions out there. The main one I normally offer is give the responsibilities to that partner of things that really make a difference. So I'm going to ask that you take over dinners. I'm going to ask that you take over laundry, things that will have a big impact if it's not taken care of. And so they're hungry, they want stuff. Yeah, dinner is your responsibility versus cleaning a front room. If they have that responsibility, that can get blown off today, tomorrow, next week, a month. Who knows? It could get blown off for a while because it doesn't have immediate consequences to it. So that is a way, but it doesn't work for everyone. But that's one way to be able to try to change the balance of the responsibilities.
So, looking at some daily structure task that needs to be done that will have the most impact because it's immediate, it's in your face. When it's done, and you can take that mental load off of your list. There was another thought around the mental load of like responsibilities versus the mental load of the negative core belief that someone holds. So I think like as we're talking, I'm really seeing that play out. That a lot of times, not only do we hold on and we are ruminating about the mental load of work stress, life stress, relationship stress, stress around parenting, just anything that comes along with the messiness of life. But then we're adding on to that mental load, the mental load of the shame spiral, the negative thinking, the feeling alone, the feeling unsupported, and all that kind of downward thinking of not being loved, not being cared for, and really regressing to like I think a younger, more feeling neglected part of us. So I think that's also a mental load to watch out for. And in this space, I would say check in with a supportive friend, check in with your therapist, talk about this with someone who can listen and offer a space to just go, maybe I do need to look at this mental load separately from the mental load of just responsibility and stress of life.
Right. And that goes back to why you do need to separate these things. It's really important that if you're feeling like you have the majority of the mental load, it might have to do with other things that would be good to talk to a professional about, and they can help sift through it for you and break that down. Because that mental load, your partner's not going to be able to take care of for you.
Yeah, I know for me personally, I have noticed like throughout the years that what stresses me out and what stays on my mental load list is things that are not resolved or things that I'm like waiting to talk about, right? So I encourage listeners who, if you're like me and there are things that you have yet to talk about with your partner, with your friends, with your supervisor or supervisee, like in any realms of your life, that's going to stay on your mental load because it's a task that has not been completed, has not been resolved or discussed. And so for me, those are the ones that stick with me. So I usually have to plan out like, okay, well, how would I move this task to complete or resolve? So I encourage folks, if you're similar and you notice that there are things on your mental load that's just pending because it needs to have a conversation, because it needs to be discharged and said or verbalized, don't wait. As soon as you can let that out, I think you will find that, you'll find some relief in sharing it and verbalizing it.
Yeah, I think ultimately, with everything we're talking about, if you're struggling in your relationship around this topic, you are being assertive, you are talking with your partner, and you're not coming up with good solutions that feel good for both of you, it's probably time to contact a therapist. They really, truly can help break some of this down, help get past some of the things that you guys are getting caught up in. So always consider talking with a professional. They can absolutely help.
Yeah. If you guys are looking for more tips, please do visit our website, www.avidcounseling.org, for some couples worksheets and some other tools that we have on there.
Yeah, we have video classes that you can check out, and then check us out on social media. We're on all the main sites. Thanks for listening.